Welcome to Actions and Limits. My name is Justin Atherton. I'm the Peak Performance Consultant for Confidence Unchained. With me as always is Paul Fortune. Paul is a mindset coach and the founder of A Call to Action. And together, we make Actions and Limits. Welcome to the show, the podcast where we talk about the actions we can take and the limits we create. Another week, Paul. I'm excited for our guest coming out, Tom Libelt. Make sure that you don't miss a single episode. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Facebook or Instagram, and make sure you're staying updated on all our upcoming content and whatever podcast platform you're listening to out there. Make sure to drop us a comment and like us and follow us on there as well. So, Paul, I'm excited to have Tom come out. He's, in the business world, so I'm kind of doing some online marketing and online courses. So I think he'll be, interesting to talk to because I don't think we've had a guest in this niche before.
Yeah, he's a very interesting guy. I was looking at his content. He started as a hip hop rapper and then moved into the business world, but the theme about his work is he's a true salesman from heart. I hear it in his podcast, viewing his content. He really knows how to sell, and his courses and what he does, he has a formula and it works.
Yeah, I'm excited to bring him out and kind of pick his brain a little bit because doing the online courses, it's something I've thought about, but I've heard some different things about online courses. Do them, don't do them. So in the business world, you always hear certain things, and people have their own opinions on how things work out or things that don't work out. So it'll be interesting to talk to him. So let's go ahead and bring him out. So Tom Libelt is a guy you call when your online course is not selling. He spends most of his time in Chiang Mai, Thailand, and he's the host of the Smart Brand Marketing Show. And in the past, Tom has published around 5,000 Kindle books, built a successful SEO business, owned a coffee shop, a retail store, a record label, created a documentary, and released 2 albums with 5 hits on the top 10 Polish radio. And he likes to say that if you can't sell, then you're not in business. Marketing and sales are the backbone of a company. So let's go ahead and bring out Tom Libelt. All right, everyone, welcome Tom Libelt to the show. Tom, so glad to have you here on the Actions and Limits podcast, man.
Yeah, man, for sure. I'm happy to be here.
I know Paul and I were checking out your content. It seems like you got a lot of different, projects going on, and it seems like you help a lot of business owners out there. What would you say is like your main focus right now, Tom?
So at the moment, we are 99% focused on marketing online courses. Okay. That's kind of what we got into at the moment.
And how important is that for businesses nowadays? I mean, especially COVID still moving through this process. Who knows how long it's going to stay with these restrictions in different states. How would you say, how important is that now compared to pre-COVID having like these, online courses?
Well, our industry blew up around March, April. Sure. And this is not anything that I caused. we became.
I would hope not.
Well, sometimes you want your, niche to blow up a little bit, but this was not, completely unintended. So a couple different things happen, right? Coaches, for example, they're unable to go to companies in person now.
Yeah.
So it helps them a lot. Speakers, especially, completely lost their incomes and ability to sell. Most of them, they would go fly, make some money, and at the end of the speech, whatever they did, just, pitch a product or something, and that's done, right? Mm-hmm. Virtual summits are doing okay, but not as much as in the beginning. People got tired of it. So
Okay.
it became sort of a much less of an income stream. Now it's just spammy. It's everywhere. It's like an MLM. But what I've seen with businesses, with small businesses, and I've been telling people this for a long time, stop looking at your customers, start looking at your competition.
Okay.
Because now what we're seeing, some of the better business owners are able to teach the competition and make money with online courses about how to actually do things the proper way, right?
Mhm.
So,
Interesting.
so having those relationships helped a lot too. So with our niche, it was mostly the coaches and the speakers who just, they just lost everything. And with small businesses, I'm like, if you're, one of the smarter ones, you're going to really take advantage of it. And some did. So it helped that part as well. But like I said, only for the smarter ones. A lot still like, oh, my competition is. I'm like they could be your best customers.
Sure.
Yeah, adapt, right? Adapt to the situation.
Yeah, but it's that fear, right? It's that fear. Like someone that's usually average is super scared of someone else beating them. And a lot of businesses and owners, and this is like in any niche, like most of the people are average or below average, but everyone thinks they're above average. Like this is like this common thing. So like I find with those it's kind of hard, but the ones that came to me, they're definitely, I can see above average for the most part. Or you probably know people like this. They don't know anything, but they're the loudest in the room and the most confident.
They have that determination, right? It's like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to figure it out, right?
Yeah, like when I think back to like middle school and preschool, the teacher would ask something, 10 people raise their hands, they have no idea what they're saying at all, but everyone's like, they're screaming things out. So we do have a portion of that
Sure.
now too, but I can usually figure it out very quickly. I'm like, you don't actually know what you're doing, and we're not going to help you market it. The worst ones are the ones who position themselves as marketers, right? Like, so I had someone like this recently. They kind of sneaked through and got on a phone call with me. And they're like, I help small businesses adapt and position and market, but yet they need my help to position, advertise and market. And I just looked at it. I was like, you do understand why I can't work with you, right? Like, I mean, if you just look at this whole situation. So there's a small percentage of that. It's always funny, but for the most part, it's like legit people who just need like and I say just diversify, your offerings. Eventually you'll be able to go speak again. Eventually you'll be able to go to companies. Although, with a lot of them going remote, it might not be the same as before.
Yeah.
Like maybe the training will not be in person in some of these companies ever again. If they just change their minds and the employees now are saying like, why would we go into office?
Sure.
So, like, I'm not sure what's going to happen, but most of the income streams will come back.
Yeah, I could probably
as with
adapt
anything-
them, or like maybe Zoom conferences. I've been seeing that a lot lately.
Yeah.
Like even
Yeah.
and so training like that too, right?
Yeah, so that's what I mean, right? Like even when things go back to normal, like look, anytime where you create more options for yourself and more offers, better positioning, more income streams, when things come back to normal, you're going to kill it even better.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's
Well,
like
yeah, nobody wants to pay rent for a commercial building if they don't need to, and they all can work remote, right?
Especially in big cities, and what we're seeing now, like San Francisco, for example, we've seen this big exodus, right, of people moving to Colorado and Arizona and other places, and they can still work. They can still do everything they did before. They're just in the place where they want to. So that itself is going to change things, because now it's going to be super difficult to find some of these best people who finally figured out that they have freedom to now drag them back into an office. They're going to be like, well, okay, you're paying me $500,000 a year and I got to be in San Francisco and get homeless people pissing on my car, or you're paying me $400,000, but I get to live wherever I want to.
Sure.
You see what I mean? Like it's going to be very difficult for the top talent. Once again, doesn't apply to like the average and the mediocre, because like just you pay me $100,000, I'm going to go anywhere. But we're talking about like the top top talent, and those are the ones who usually make it in online courses. Also, like with anything else, the best ones are always going to clean up.
Sure. So what's the tips that you give for businesses that are looking to start this process of creating an online course? Like they already have their course, maybe they've been selling it in person or, some version of online, but creating a course where there's, zero personal interaction. What are the tips that you give, moving through that?
So it's a couple different things, right? Like if you're a business owner now, the main thing you want to think of is what do I know that other competition would want to steal from me? And then you put a price on it. You create a good outcome and teach them that and put a price on it. You could also just think about, what outcomes you could save people time on, right? Like stuff that you've learned, you went through and you figured out. But the people trying to get into the business now, like, what if I can save them 5 years? What if I can save them 3 years? What if I can save them $30,000 in this lawsuit? Like, you know what I mean? Like there's
Sure.
things which, so that's the time saving. With most courses, it's really about just having a very quick and clear outcome that you can put some value on. That's really all it is, unlike just being in a very niche market, but that's not really the audience we're going after. And the niche market would be something like people, let's say, are really into Japanese calligraphy, right? There's always going to be a little offset of a market that likes weird, obscure things, but they're super in love with it.
Sure.
And then when you look at that market and you're like, well, usually these markets have like forums online from 2002 who are still engaged, which says something, right? But the main thing is, look, you look at people like that and you think of them living anywhere in the world. So let's say some little town in Ohio or in Arizona. And they want to learn this niche, this Japanese calligraphy. And this could be anything. Where will they find a master? Is he going to be living in that small town also? Probably not.
Sure.
Probably not. So for that market, you might have a small market, like 60, 70, 80,000 people in the world, but they're super into it and they cannot find anyone even remotely close to them that's amazing they can learn from.
Yeah.
Well, that's where you go online, and you're also going to clean up because, if you're the best and you can market to these people, you can find this audience and you can present to them that you're the best one, they can't find anyone. So simple sale. They got to go online, and the people are not going to fly. I mean, some are, but that could be your like higher offering.
Yeah.
They might fly to your, little resort in Tokyo and come and, but this is going to be a much more expensive thing. So,
Sure.
you want to have a different price tier, which is for just people like, look, I'm not flying, to wherever you are. I just want to do it online.
Yeah.
So that's another really good market for online courses.
So it's like having that niche, right?
Having a niche. And I've seen really strange ones like the knitting community, for example. I would have never thought that, people are into knitting that much. But again, passes all the steps, like the best knitter, probably not in your city. I found forums from 2001, 2003 that are super engaged, more engaged than Facebook groups. That means this is like a really solid, hungry community that's for somehow been ignored. So different things like that, you'll find a lot of them, especially as I have people coming to me, but it's not something that I guess a regular small business owner will ever have because, it's not, no one's that into becoming a law agency or, whatever. Like, no, it's not going to be that. For 25 years, no one's been, posting and being engaged about like, I want to start this business and I'm so in love with contracts. It's not going to happen.
You have a very interesting background. You started off as a rapper and now you're into this. What was the transition? How'd that all come about?
Well, I was always into business and music from when I was young, right? And I had a record store that I part-owned when I was 16. And I wanted to get the music industry part out of my system too. And since I liked hip hop, I would have probably had a much better time if I liked rock or something else because it's a much different type of industry. But with hip hop, the culture likes young and damaged and angry, right? So I knew I got to come out hard when I'm like 20 Because even I back then was making fun of like 30-year-olds rapping. I'm like, we had like some competition in the neighborhood, and like, the first disses were like, 30 and still rapping. What happened? Yeah. So I knew I can't put this off into the second part of my life. Like, with rock, you could. You still have like 50, 60-year-olds like doing gigs on the regular. It's a bit sad with most hip hoppers when they do that. So I kind of went hard into it, and also I picked a good niche. So I was born in Poland, and then we moved to the U.S. when I was around 10, and I was in the U.S. market for a long time. But when I moved to New York in my early 20s, somehow I ended up in the Polish neighborhood for the first time in my U.S. life. And I'm going to these U.S. Regular studios where I'm recording the top artists, and I'm looking at this industry, seeing if I want to get into it. And I'm like, this is going to be brutal. It's a very brutal, very niche and connected, and but I'm looking at my neighborhood, and there was a lot. It was around 1 million Polish people around that area, and around 1 million Polish people in Chicago. So I was like, okay, that's a decent market just in the U.S. And I looked at them. I was like, I can so dominate this. Sometimes just when you go in and you see, like this is like the NBA playing on the left, you're about to join the game, but there's like this local neighborhood team on the right, and you just like, I can definitely take this over, and I did. So that was like my way into it. We put out 2 albums. We did a ton of concerts. We had TV stations from Poland come in and do like features on us, and a lot of opportunities, but I kind of got it out of my system and went back in business around 25, 26 years old. But I did it. Like, I'm never going to regret or think, what if? Like, I did it. I came out hard.
So what happened at 26? You just lost the luster, or?
Like, I sort of accomplished what I wanted to in the music, And, sometimes, especially in hip hop, like I said, when you get to a certain age, it's like the culture kind of moves on, and you just don't have that much to say anymore. Like, I wasn't as damaged and angry anymore at 26 as I was at 20. Like, it's just normal. Like, we kind of get through it. I wasn't broke. I wasn't hanging around the benches anymore, like drinking beers with the, like it wasn't that anymore. I'm like, what am I going to talk about? And I thought, the contracts I seen that was being offered by the industry were not that great. Like, I would have ended up making maybe $40,000-$50,000 a year. I'd have to go to Poland because that was, kind of like where it was pulling me. I'd have to put out 1 album a year and do concerts pretty much for the rest of the year. And if you think about that, like, how many years are you going to play this Groundhog Day thing? Because that's what it is. Like, oh, I got to put out an album, and then I got a tour, and then an album. And if I don't have that much to say, it's going to become pretty sad in about 4 or 5 years. And then I thought, I still love the business world. I was always interested in it. I'm creative. I'm analytical. I'm a good salesperson. And I was like, let me just get better at that. It's something I'll never master, because you can't never really master any of these skills. But unlike with hip hop, with business, the older I get and the better I get, the more people like me and respect me and pay me more. Complete opposite in that market. So I thought that's going to be my second hit, and that's where I went into it.
There you go. I like that idea of, getting into something that you'll never master. Like, that you're going to have to continue to go through that process and continue to better yourself. And I think that's an interesting angle to approach it as.
Yeah, because I've been in it for a long time, and I'm really good at what I do. Mm-hmm. But there's so many times where I see something new and I'm like, maybe I don't know anything, and I go again trying to figure it out. So I mean, it happens more now than when I was starting out, because I thought I knew everything. Sure. And then now my answer now went from yes or no to it depends almost 90% of the time.
What would you say is like one of the biggest things you've learned along the way?
That no matter what you're selling or how you're selling, you're still selling to people. And people still have the same common things that they dislike and like, the same traits. And, like, that's more of what you need to learn than, the product benefits and all these things. Like, if you can really meet someone where they're at. So like if someone's having a problem or trying to get away from something, meet them halfway, get them to join the conversation, show them outcomes, show how you're going to remove them from where they are at now, tell them how your method or service or anything is the best. And then kind of, like if you can move people through these pieces, and this is for every single, product, course, anything, that's what you need to learn. That's where the money is.
Sure.
So you went,
yeah.
So at 26, you start selling courses, or what were you selling?
No, not even close, man. Like I knew that I needed to learn a lot more when I was 25, 26. So like I said, even back then I was really good at sales, but I had no idea why it was working at all. Like, I'm like, I don't know if I'm just getting lucky or just, getting, I don't know. So my first plan was I'm going to get hired by all these big corporations in sales roles because I learned that they pay for your training.
There you go.
Smart.
So, their whole thing was, we're going to train this guy, send him on the streets and then make money off of him for a long time. It didn't really work out that way. They would train me. They'd, take me on the streets because I did inside sales, outside retail. And this was in New York, like Brooklyn, Queens, like brutal neighborhoods to sell door to door. And, they would take me out. I would try to hit my goal. If I came close, I would quit and go somewhere else. So they almost had me, but never really, and I switched between, I think, like 9 companies doing this. And I
within what type of span?
I think 2.5, 3 years, just a couple months at each. And I was off, man. Like, I'm like, you taught me everything I know. Thank you. I'm moving on. And, after that, I'm like, I can sell anything now. I could sell over the phone. I could sell retail, door to door, which that was, like I said, brutal in Brooklyn and Queens, and not a place I would recommend to.
I guess it'd be a good training ground, right? You'd be up for anything after that, right?
No, it broke a lot of people. Like we had almost at every company I went door to door with, we had like 300 to 400% turnover. It broke people very quickly. They cried. It was brutal. Like I said, not the best place. Like if you're going to be in New York, maybe go to Long Island or something. They're much nicer out there. But for me, I think it kind of helped because I always had a pretty thick skin, but it just made my skin like soup. Like at this point, like very little can affect me. You know what I mean?
Sure. If you're able to push through something like that, where most people are falling away, every day, now nothing's a big deal, right?
No, like, if we get like a rejection or a customer or like prospect saying no, I'm just like, I don't even remember them in a day or two. Like we're moving on. It's like, I seriously, like, it's just like, that's nice. Or, like something that would have probably broke me when I was 24. And now it's just like, I'll take care of it tomorrow after lunch. Like I seriously, don't, but that came all from these rejections. And I also picked the worst industries.
So what were you selling?
Well, I'll tell you the worst one: life insurance.
Is that the toughest one to sell?
That's the one, and any company will tell you if this guy can sell life insurance in New York, he can sell anything. It's that bad. It is that bad. We had some other ones which were not great, but like another one which people love. Car warranties, extended warranties over the phone.
Oh, jeez.
That sounds worse than life insurance to me.
Well, with this one, you're just on the phone, so it's not as much, right? You don't need to go and actually go to these people and convince them of, you're going to sell them some air.
So what are some of these tips? I mean, because that's a couple of those, it sounds hard to try to sell that. So like you said, life insurance in New York, trying to sell car warranties. I don't know if I've ever looked at one for more than half a second or like, hey, I'm trying to sell you a car. No, get out of here. So like, what tips did you learn to actually be successful in those areas? Because obviously that's something that would transcend any, sales marketing, job.
Yeah. So the main thing was, like I said, about meeting people where their head is at. No one's thinking about, I need an extended car warranty on a Monday afternoon, right? Usually you think about that when you're buying the car, like initially, right? Like maybe I'll get a 0% deductible. So that's another thing. I learned all the best plans that my companies did not want to sell. So now I know which ones to buy. But the second thing was like, people don't think about that, but they might be, worrying about a big expense coming up. They might be thinking about, what if this car doesn't really survive the next 5 years? What if I want to sell this car and get the best price for it? Like there are different things going on in someone's head.
Sure.
Where at the end you can say like, well, we kind of went over this, like, and everyone's like, yeah, that's exactly what I'm going through. And the solution, unfortunately, is an extended car warranty. And this is why it's going to work for you, because we can do this and that. But it taught me that you need to meet people what they're thinking about now. Like even with ads, you got to interrupt them in a way where usually it's A, something they want to go towards, or B, something they want to escape from. Right?
Sure.
This is where all my kind of ad ideas come from. Is well, that's the two things that people are usually dealing with. Something's annoying them, or something they're feeling like I want it. And just you got to figure it out in your industry.
So those ideas, pains and desires, right?
Yeah. But as you selling it, it's really about that. I'm helping to move you from that place of pain. I'm not telling you what your pains are, because that's not the same thing.
Sure.
And with desires too, it's like, what's the biggest desire? What's the main thing? It's not usually, oh, I'm a web designer working for a crappy boss and I want to go to be a freelancer. Like, what if you could have a gig that pays you $10,000? What would you do with that? Like, what would happen if you actually gained your freedom back? Right? There's always something more at that outcome than like, hey, and now you can be a freelancer. And they're like, yeah, great. Right? Which is what I usually see. So that's what it really taught me. It's like, figuring out that initial part of how do I get people to join this conversation without me pitching nonsense on it.
Sure. So you're painting the picture for them.
I'm painting the picture, and I'm kind of, showing them both. Like, I can take you out of this place which you don't want to be in, and I can move you towards this place without telling you anything about what I'm selling first, right? Like we're just talking in the beginning.
Building rapport.
Sort of. Like I'm leading you. I'm really leading you. You might think it's building rapport, but I know what I'm doing.
Sure. Yeah. Anything like that, it's a calculated, conversation, right? You're moving them through and being like asking them, not necessarily leading questions, but questions that are going to get a certain response. So what are some of those things? Like, how do you lead that conversation?
It really depends on, what I'm selling, right?
Sure.
Like if you're selling health stuff, then education will probably be a good thing, and showing people, the things that will happen if they don't go with it, where they're at, because there's always some kind of a problem. If you're selling services, like I would teach people exactly everything that I do so they see how annoying it is and let me do it myself. If I'm selling online courses, I'm not educating people at all in the beginning. I'm framing the outcome. I'm framing what would happen after this course is over.
Okay.
Because the main thing with courses, a bit of education doesn't sell more education.
Sure.
So I've seen this, and this is like horribly advertised by all the platforms that do online courses. And I see, people failing with it all the time. Like, for example, if you're selling a meditation course, right? You got a flagship meditation course. You're going to help people with anxiety, blah, blah, all this stuff. And then your lead magnet, the lead magnet's like the first thing you give people to get their email or, get their contact, is I'm going to teach you a 5-minute or 2-minute meditation technique. Well, if someone's outcome is to learn meditation and get rid of anxiety, by you giving them that, it's solved, right?
Sure.
Like think, even though they haven't maybe meditated, they haven't even touched it, in the back of their head, it's solved. It's like when you see a person that has 25 self-help books, on their bookshelf, but they never read one. The thing is, it makes them feel better. They figured it out, right? Like there's a book, like, oh, how was your time management? Oh yeah, I got this. There's a book on it. I'll take care of it later, right? So with the, when you teach people in a lead magnet, and let's say, it's meditation, I want to learn it. I'm like, okay, yeah, I got this. It's on my hard drive. It's all good. And then you start pitching them like, and now I'm going to sell you a meditation course. It's like, why? You already took care of that for me. Yeah, you just gave it to me. Like, this is stupid. And then people ignore, and, then you have people going like, well, how come I can't sell this? I'm like, well, because you already gave it away.
So go into the framing some, because you talk to some business coaches out there, and that's what they pitch. They pitch like, give all this value up front, like teach your methodology, put it out there, like teach what you do, and then the people are going to want more. But you're saying a different strategy. You're saying framing it. So
Framing it. Yeah. So
explain
for
that some more.
example, let's say someone wants to learn how to get rid of anxiety. Let's go back to this meditation example, right? And they think meditation maybe is the way out. They're not sure. So you frame it by getting down to the actual foundation of both of these methods, and that's the breath. I want to teach you about the breath, to start noticing your breath, or just teach you how important is the breath and convince you that the outcome depends on you figuring it out. I'm not going to show you how to do it. I'm not going to teach you anything about it. I'm going to convince you of the outcome, that it's possible. I'm going to say, look, I will take your anxiety away. I will teach you how we do it. And the way is the breath. And I'll convince you in all the ways that it has helped everyone and the history and stuff. So when a person comes off from this lead magnet, they now know that the breath is what separates him from his outcome. And then when you pitch them the meditation, I want it now. Okay, see what I mean? Because they know this is the key, but now in my course, I'm going to teach you how to use this key. Right? So think about a different one. Like, let's say someone's trying to learn how to play an instrument, and it's one where you have to use your breath in somewhat, right? So instead of me teaching you how to play the instrument, I will teach you breathing techniques.
Okay.
Using those, you'll never be able to play it. It's got nothing to do really with it, but you can't start playing the instrument until you figure out your breath anyways. So why not? I'll teach you that. If I'm learning a language like Thai, for example, my lead magnet could be, I will teach you how to pronounce some of the sounds. It's not going to teach you the language, but you will need these to, and I'll tell you why this is the key to, learning the language. So then when you start the actual course, you'll be like, well, I got the sounds, and you were right. They were key. Because if you don't understand the sounds, well, you can't listen or speak, right? So you're framing the situation and you're saying this is the key to learn the next step, but you're not teaching anything that you're selling in the course. You're just setting up a foundation, right? Like if I'm going to teach you how to do pull-ups, maybe we should work on your wrist strength for a little bit before, and tell you that the main thing that separates people from doing a lot of pull-ups and a few is how weak their grip is. Right?
Sure.
So let's focus on the grip. This is the key. Everything else, I'll teach you in the course, right? So it's all about framing this outcome and just giving people like, this is the key. This is the one thing that will separate you from the person who's succeeding. And then if you convince them of that outcome, it's a much easier sale later on, because they're kind of in it. They're convinced, they're learning this one thing that you told them, like, I'm so ready. Where's the course now?
And I can see how that would be useful, not only in just online courses, but, even as far as like coaches and consultants selling their program, it's like framing, the key pieces, the key elements that are going to help you with the program and be successful in the program, teach those. And so when you do pitch the program, it's like, that's what I need. That's what I want. And then, like you said, having those key pieces that you talked about beforehand, then they're almost, more solved on it as they're moving through the program, right?
Yeah. So this is what Anthony Robbins does all the time, right? Like he has I don't know what the courses names are or the programs, but like Live Your Best Life or whatever, Unleash Confidence, whatever it is. But if you look at his like free or cheap stuff, the books, it's mostly mindset things. Like, I will teach you how your mind is the key and controlling your mind. And I'll teach you about certainty, uncertainty, and all these different things that play roles in your mind. And when you have that foundation, then you're just like, well, how do I use it? And that's when, you got to come to my program, which is, a 3-day event, and I will teach you how to use these tools. And, So it's the same exact method because he's teaching at the end, right?
Sure.
It's not a course, but he's still teaching. It's still education.
Yeah.
Very simple. Yeah. So he frames things in his books a lot. And then, once you figure it out, you're just like, yeah, this is definitely it. I go through these all the time. One day I'm happy, one I'm sad. Big, surprise. But then I'll teach you how to use this to your advantage. And that's when people sign up.
Yeah, that makes sense. You don't want to give away all your secrets, because then eventually they're like, well, I got all the secrets for free. So then, like you said, I don't need to buy the course. I don't need to buy the program. So I completely understand, but it sounds a little counterintuitive to what some coaches are putting out there, but I can see both sides of the spectrum there. You want to give value, but you don't want to give all of your secrets away for free. That's what it seems like to me.
Yeah, most of the coaches that talk about this stuff have actually never really sold them well.
Sure.
And I see that all the time too. And then you have a couple outliers. But look, if you're really good at video, you have a really hungry audience, you can mess up all this stuff and still sell a few.
Sure.
So we had this saying in sales in almost every company I went to. It is also a numbers game.
Mhm.
It's going to be bad numbers, but it's also a numbers game. Then I could go to 100 people, even in Brooklyn, and sell them anything. Be the worst salesperson, worst pitch, and 1 out of 100 is going to feel bad for me and buy it.
Sure.
Right. So sometimes if something's working, it could just be that, but it's going to be working poorly, right? Like you're going to get like the lowest conversion rate in your whole industry,
Mm-hmm.
but you're still okay, because maybe it's, something that makes you enough money to survive, but that's not what you actually want to be doing. It's like, this is, like you're at the bottom of the barrel like type of sales guy. But yeah, I mean, look, anything can work, man. Like I could, if you read enough experts on the internet, everything cancels itself out at the end.
Sure.
Right? Everyone's got a different opinion. This is like the main thing. If someone says, email marketing is the best thing, the next one's going to say it's dead. And then this one's going to say social is the best thing. And then this one's going to say social is dead because now Messenger is the best thing. And then the next one's going to say, whoa, Messenger, that's dead. Email marketing is the best. And at the end, you're just like, well, I don't know. Maybe nothing works now.
So what's your ideal client? Who's your ideal client?
In our company?
Yeah.
The ideal client is usually someone that's got a course, it's selling well, they've exhausted one channel that they somehow luckily got into, and then they just need to scale the program. That's the easiest, job for us. The second one is if they pass all the kind of boxes and they just need to get the course out, but they're an expert, they have a good following, they just don't know how to translate that online. That would be, I guess, the second tier of a perfect client. But what we find often happens is someone checks off all the boxes. They start putting videos, let's say, on YouTube. They get to 6 figures really easily. Because if you just get one channel, one message, right, and often it's just luck and niche, you're going to make it happen. And then they just realize, well, I can put out 100 more videos and I make no extra money. Like I plateaued now. And then they actually need some real marketer to come in and be like, well, let me just kind of reverse engineer what you did and let's make it really big now. That's the easiest. And lately, that's kind of what I've been taking on because we get enough leads where I can pick my ideal clients.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. So how can people reach out to you if they want to work with you, Tom?
The best way is to go to wemarketonlinecourses.com. And all the info's on that. We got case studies and we have, like a survey and you can book a call, like everything's on there. Really easy. But once again, like if you're right now suffering a little bit and you fall into one of these kind of places that I told you, it could be a really good way to set yourself apart.
Yeah.
And even later on, to just basically you're going to start separating your time from your money.
Sure.
And that's what everyone wants to do at some point, even speakers. I don't know many speakers who are like, oh, I wish I could fly out 10 more times this year. More would be like, well, if this course could have me flying less, that would be a big win, right? So
Yeah.
that's kind of what they do for people is they kind of free them up. It's just like build once and sell multiple times.
Make them more efficient.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you use certain platforms to put those courses out on?
We actually care very little about those
Oh,
things. I'm like,
really?
stop focusing on the tools.
Okay.
Like if people are interested, like our favorite one is Kajabi. The second one is Thinkific, but it doesn't really matter.
Really? So it's just about finding it, and
look,
doesn't
the
matter the website.
platform is the hosting of your course.
Sure.
So your business doesn't depend on if you buy your domain from GoDaddy or Namecheap. Your business doesn't matter if you have it hosted on CloudWaves or HostGator.
Sure.
It's that part is not going to help your course at all. Like, yeah, it could maybe make it slower or not as great to interact with, but it's not going to. That's the one last thing that's going to break or make your company. So just there's so many providers. Just pick one and focus on the important stuff.
I think that's a good tip for anybody thinking about creating a course, is like, because I'm sure that's a question that's out there. They're thinking, where do I start? Like, who do I use? But if you're saying it doesn't matter, just start, just get it there. It's about the marketing and getting the right message, right?
Yeah, it's the main question we get asked from like beginners and anyone that spent 3 years trying to figure it out, and they put out a course. They always come to me and it's like, dude, like I've done everything they told me to. I picked the best up and nothing's selling. I'm like, yeah, well, why don't you create business cards? Maybe they'll help.
Yeah.
I like that, Tom. That's funny, man. Well, man, I really glad you could come on the show and share your message with us and just kind of the niche, that you're into, because I think it's something, like you said, with the COVID, it really blew up, and it sounds like you're doing really well and helping a lot of these businesses, kind of shift what they're doing, kind of move online a little bit more and find ways to be more efficient with their time. So I like it. And it sounds like you're doing a good job for your clients, Tom. So we like to wrap up the show asking our guests, a couple questions with the title of our podcast in mind, Actions and Limits. What would you say, whether it's around marketing or not, what is the number one action that people listening right now could put into place that could really make a difference, in their business?
You got to create systems for your marketing, right? So stuff that's working nonstop without you having to go on social media, post 3 motivational quotes, and then message 10 people, right? Like it should be a system that works.
Sure.
I find these like short-term hustles, they get exhausting and they're not always easy to replicate. So you might get lucky one day. Like it's better to create systems. Like for us, we'll have one of my assistants, she will reach out to 100 podcasts per day, or another one will message 100 course creators and just ask them about what's happening in their business. We'll have, a Facebook campaign going at all times and getting people into our email, thing. Like my main job is to come up with one piece of good content and make sure my email list is super engaged and they like it. And that kind of builds everything else. But it's about systems, right? Like we don't wake up every day and be like, oh, how are we going to get clients? Like we know how we're going to get clients. The leads will be coming in, but it's built on systems. It's not on, like I'm going to create a couple goals and tomorrow I'm going to hit these,
Sure. Yeah, I like that. I think that's important for people to realize, putting those into place, and it can make you more efficient with your time as well. So the other half of that are these limits that we impose on ourselves, and especially with, either small businesses or people that are trying to figure out, where to move with their business. What would you see as the biggest limit that people put on themselves, business related, that they need to get rid of immediately?
Limits. Most people are just not really good at business, man. No, it's true. Look, COVID definitely happened, right? And
Sure.
it destroyed a lot of businesses.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of these businesses should have been alive anymore at this point anyways. It was just more of a luck and, riding the wave. Like back in the mortgage places, right? Like everyone was flipping houses. And you were just like, no, it shouldn't be happening. Then with Bitcoin, you had truck drivers and strippers becoming experts. And you're just like, no, this should not be happening anymore. So big limit, man. Like it's hard to say because the thing is, look, we're in business, business is not something that stays static. You're going to have changes. You're going to have to come up with creative ideas. Things will happen all the time, and you should expect them. Like, that's what the business is. You know, and I usually find if someone says like, oh, something big happened out of my control and I'm done, I'm like, well, you were already done before. This just kind of puts you out of your misery.
Yeah.
You know, because for a real business person, it's like something new happened. Okay, well, we'll deal with it tomorrow after lunch.
Yeah.
You know, we'll come up with some new ideas. We'll try new strategies. We'll put out some new offers. You know, hopefully I wasn't doing a horrible job and we have some money to ride this out. You know, like, look, I definitely feel bad for the restaurants and places who are, this is like really, you know, out of their control. Like what I said does not apply to most of them, except the ones on like Gordon's shows where he comes in and says like how crappy the food is, you know, because we've seen those, the kitchen nightmares, like you guys should have been out of business.
Sure.
But for most, like I get it, you know, that's the government playing, you know, a role that they shouldn't really, you know.
Yeah.
And for those, but again, the best ones, they still figured it out. The best ones moved to like deliveries and doing different things, like, you know, like
It's about the adaptability, right?
it's
And
it's
I,
yeah, it's
I
really
think
like,
that's
look,
the biggest thing.
yeah, like the real business people always figure it out.
Yeah.
Always figure it out. Like you might not be making as much money as you did for a while. You might have to make some really big changes, but that's business.
Yeah. And like you said, I think it's accurate. You know, if you didn't, you know, make it through one disaster, you know, there was probably something else coming behind it that was going to do something, barring, like you said, the certain restaurants that were just completely impacted by that. But yeah, I think it's an accurate statement saying that a lot of those companies were on the verge anyway. But Tom, man, a lot of great insight. Thank you for coming on the show, man. I know our audience got a lot out of it, and anyone out there thinking about creating that course, creating that online course, make sure to reach out to Tom. We're going to put all of his information down in the show notes. And again, Tom, thank you so much for coming on the Actions of Limits podcast, man.
Yeah, it's been great. Thanks for having me.
Paul, Tom was a great guest, man. You know, I know he was kind of in his own little niche about these online courses, and it was definitely interesting to hear his side of it, because I've heard the other side of it, people saying, you know, things against these online courses, but man, maybe right now is the time that a lot of businesses can start implementing that stuff. What do you think?
Well, I got to tell you, Tom is a true salesman, and he said a lot of things that salespeople want to get to. And one of the first things is he's not afraid to hear a no. Mm-hmm. And that's huge, because a lot of us are afraid of rejection. If we can get over rejection, sky's the limits in sales. And the fact that he's able to adapt to different environments, that's key, because a lot of times in sales and business, you know, you have a big portion of it going, you know what, I don't know what to do. And they just panic. And Tom's the kind of person that goes, okay, this is not working. Let me pivot. Let me find the way, you know, and having that proper attitude to find a solution. Like he said, I'll figure it out at the end of lunch tomorrow. Hopefully it's a good lunch.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think we kind of touched on it there at the end, the adaptability, right? Like it sounds like he's, you know, able to roll with the punches and be adaptable. And like you said, pivot. So I think that is something that is so important, you know, especially in the business world. You know, do we need to be able to do that in our personal lives as well, and handle things that come our way and redirect our, you know, behaviors based on what's going on around us? Yeah. Because if like, it's a rough thing to hear, I think, but I think he was being very honest that he talked about a lot of these businesses that failed were probably on the verge anyway. Because if you can't survive one, you know, incident from happening, obviously COVID isn't a small thing to go through, but there are certain businesses that were like on the verge anyway. It's kind of like a relationship that, you know, the first rough patch you go through, you know, you get divorced. You know, that relationship was doomed anyway, right? Because if you weren't able to push through that and be adaptable to the situation and be, you know, have enough emotional fortitude to be able to push through that, then were you even going to make it, very much longer anyway? So it's a harsh truth to hear. And I like how he kind of pulled back and said, except for the restaurants, because the restaurant industry was just kind of decimated by this. But it's a harsh truth to hear, but you have to be adaptable. And those businesses that did, and the restaurants that did adapt to outside dining, doing to-go orders when they've never done to-go orders in their whole life of their business, it's like, we got to do something or we're going to die. So I like that, that he wrapped it up with that adaptability, which is very important. So, well, we can go ahead and wrap up the show with another segment of Ask Paul Anything. Make sure you're sending in your questions to actionsandlimits@gmail.com to get your questions featured on the show. And this one comes in from Dennis in Texas. And it says, Paul, in 40 years, what will people be nostalgic for?
In 40 years, what will people be nostalgic for? And I think it's the same thing today, and it's authenticity.
How so?
Because I think that's what sells. I really do. I feel like the companies that bring authentic value to their customers are going to last. I look at, because I'm on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn all day long. And I'm looking through ads to better myself and get ideas and stuff. And I see some of the stuff and I'm not buying it. It's not coming off authentic.
Sure.
And the stuff that's coming authentic hits me. Even if I don't really want the product, maybe I might want the product down the road because I felt the message was very authentic. I think that people will crave that.
I like that. And that kind of reminds me of our guest, Mark Schaefer, talking about market rebellion and really being authentic and reaching out to your customers out there. So that's awesome. So again, another great show, Paul. Glad we're starting off the year with some great guests, and looking forward to interviews coming up, man. We've got some great ones.
Absolutely. For Justin Atherton, this is Paul Fortune. We'll see you next week.
All right. See you next Monday. Thank you for listening to the show. Don't miss an episode. Click and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on your favorite podcast platform and find us on Instagram and Facebook under Actions and Limits to stay updated on all our upcoming content. Continue to email the show at actionsandlimits@gmail.com for our segment Ask Paul Anything. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next week.